Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 997B, and today's date is June 14th, 2016, and the title of the episode is More Special Op Teams Arrive in the Middle East to Assist the U.S. in War. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I uploaded today an interview with David Quintieri. He's from Money GPS. And you can see this on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. So you can just go right over to the YouTube channel. You'll see the video there. Or you can come over to the X22Report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side. You'll see the video there. Or you can go to newssentinel.com. Same thing. Scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, and you can play the video right there. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, back in 2008, the president, when he was campaigning, he promised that he was going to close Guantanamo Bay, the detention camp, which is outside the United States, where they torture people. And we see at this point that the White House was continually saying that they were going to use executive actions to close the military prison. And Obama is out there saying that he's not going to be doing this because he can't, because of Congress. Congress has stopped him. And when we look at this, did Congress really stop him? No, they didn't. Actually, we knew from the beginning that they were never going to close Guantanamo Bay. They were never going to do these things because the power structure will not allow this. They need these areas to keep these people. And they need them outside of the United States, because when they're outside the United States, they say, well, they don't have rights, they don't have freedoms. You know, in a country where we believe in democracy, due process, we take individuals, we throw them into these prisons without any proof, torture them without a lawyer, without due process. So they're guilty and they have to prove their innocence, which is the opposite of the way our system works. And the president has the authority right now in existing legislation to achieve the result by transferring detainees out of Guantanamo. Now, Congress did amend the National Defense Authorization Act 3 years ago to prohibit funding for the transfer of any Guantanamo detainees to the U.S. It also prohibited funding for transfers to other countries unless the Defense Secretary personally certified the transferred detainee would never engage in terrorist activities. Now, you know they can't do that, and it made no sense to have that in there. So Congress amended the law to allow the Secretary to waive the requirement and to transfer detainees to other countries he finds, and other countries allow these individuals into. The President also has another route available. The law allows the administration to transfer detainees pursuant to a court order, simply by consenting to court orders for the release. For example, detainees who have already been cleared, the Justice Department could authorize their transfer free from congressional restrictions. Yet, this has never been done. Why? Because they don't want these people leaving. They don't want them telling their story of what has happened in there, how they were tortured, how they were completely innocent, how they were patsies, how they were working for the CIA. They don't want any of this out there. Now, something just occurred where the Senate on Tuesday, today, passed a sweeping defense policy that includes the requiring of women to register for the draft. Now, the Senate approved the NDAA 85-13, and it contained the requirements to register women with the Selective Service System, just like all the men or young adults that reach 18. You have to register with the Selective Service. And we can see at this point, the proposal was not considered on the Senate floor since it was included in the bill that emerged from the Armed Services Committees. Now, the question is, why are they pushing this so hard? Why do they want the draft of women? Well, the only thing I can think of at this point is that they're preparing for a major war, and they need all hands on deck. They need your sisters, your mother, your cousin, your wife. They need whoever they can get to fight their battles. And we can see at this time there is a draft bill floating in Congress, just pending, sitting there. Because at the right moment, at the right time, they're going to take that and say, we are at war. We need to start drafting people once again. Now, of course, this is completely against the Constitution. It's against our rights. This is what they were protesting back during the Vietnam War. But they're going to use this to bring people into the armed forces to go fight their battles across the sea. And eventually, those battles will come home here to the United States. And we should all be nervous about this. Because, as we can see, this is not going to be a war where, oh, I'm hearing stories of a war. It's not really affecting us. It's going to affect everyone. Each time there's a world war, or any type of war, there are more advanced weapons, more casualties, and the distance of attacks shortens because of the advanced weaponry. And we know many of the countries have these type of weapons that can reach the soil of the United States with absolutely no problem, getting through the defenses of the United States. And we can see at this point that the government, the central bankers, they are preparing for this. Now, John Kerry is calling on Venezuela to release political prisons and alleviate shortages. It looks like the United States, they're making their move in Venezuela, because you have to realize the United States has been pursuing economic war against Venezuela, making them suffer and struggle. And now we see that Kerry is strongly committed to working with member states to address Venezuela's deeply troubling situation. So it looks like they're getting ready to do something in Venezuela, where they're going to try to remove Maduro, and they're trying to gain support for this because the people are suffering. There are shortages, there's inflation, and they're trying to make their move at this point. Now we see Russia. They are improving their S-400 and S-500 air defense systems. They're receiving an upgrade, which will allow them to hide from enemy satellite spy planes and radars. They will become undetectable because they're going to place this special container that will also be used to shield mobile command centers, air defense systems, radar stations, and other hardware with complex electronic equipment. So the United States, the coalition forces, are going to have a very difficult time spotting these systems. They'll be completely blind and cloaked. And this is going to pose a huge problem in all the different areas. And what is happening right now is the U.S., along with NATO, they're moving more military assets all around the world. We've been tracking this for a very long time. Actually, we're seeing this accelerate. It has not slowed down. We see the U.S. has carrier strike groups in the Pacific on drills. We have the carrier strike groups in the Mediterranean on different missions in Syria. We see that the U.S. is having drills in Poland. And we can see the U.S. is provoking these nations all at the same time, trying to push war. This is their end game. Now, Obama was out there, and he was talking about how the U.S. is fighting terrorism in 15 different countries, where the American military, they're carrying out counterterrorism operations across the world. And that's in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Somalia, Yemen, Libya, Cuba, Nigeria, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Egypt, Jordan, and many others. And we see at this point that the U.S. is out doing regime change, garrison countries, and this is not about terrorism. This is about maintaining the central bankers' system, keeping the dollar propped up so they can continually remain the power of the world. And continually bring in more and more wealth to themselves. This has nothing to do with about freedom, democracy, or terror, because as we know, most of this terror is created by the government. Now, out in Syria, we see there's another country that is joining the US, UK, France, and other coalition forces. Germany, they're going to be bringing in their SWAT team, which arrived to support the special op teams inside of Syria. And we already know that France is building a base. The US is building 2 bases. We see the Germans have arrived, and other coalition forces are already on the ground in Syria. Now, remember, Assad has not invited any of these countries into his country to help. This is a sovereign country. All of these countries just invaded another country. Can you imagine if Assad brought troops into Germany, into the UK, into France, into the United States? Is that okay? To fight terrorism, because we do have the Islamic State here in the United States. I mean, he could do this. Russia could do this. They say, yes, wherever the Islamic State is, that's where we go. How would the United States, Germany, UK, France, how would they consider this? This would be an invasion without the permission of the government. And this is what the United States is doing at this time, along with the coalition forces. And what we're seeing is a huge buildup to what they are planning. They're not going after the Islamic State. This is their proxy army. They might be cleaning house right now. They're supporting Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra. They're supporting the moderate rebels, because if they didn't have these forces on the ground, the whole thing would just fold at this point, because Russia and Syria, they are completely pushing them back and holding them at bay. And what we're seeing right now is a huge buildup of military assets, military troops in this area. We know we have 2 aircrafts in the Mediterranean with their strike groups. Bases are being built. Troops are on the ground. And we know there's drills going on in Jordan at the same time, with a huge amount of military assets and equipment and troops. We're going to have to watch this situation very, very carefully. We've seen this before, back in 2014, 2013, and 2015, where something happens during the month of August when Congress goes on break and Obama is left in the White House. All of a sudden we have an event and something occurs. And this is what we're looking at right now. All the indicators are pointing to this. So far, nothing has changed. Actually, we're getting more and more indicators as we get closer and closer to the month of August. Now, can things change? Of course they can. Do you really think the central bank and the U.S. government, they have plans that are nailed down that can never change? You think everything goes as planned? Not really. Their goals are always the same. They might have to regroup, they might have to change things, but at this point, we're still looking at this time frame. And we've seen Libya with a state of emergency where they're telling U.S. citizens to get out, do not travel there. We have a travel advisory all throughout Europe. And we have a travel advisory in Lebanon. And we're most likely going to see another travel advisory, most likely throughout Europe and Syria. And they're going to tell people to completely stay away. Remember, they already evacuated all the military personnel in Turkey, all the families, they're gone. So we're starting to see all of this come together. The pieces are starting to come together because what they're preparing for is something huge. Now, what is that? We don't know at this point. And this is what we need to watch, and we need to look at the indicators, and we need to figure out what is going on. Now, the U.S. came out that said any cyber attack on American surveillance satellites could be considered an act of war. And this is coming from the Permanent Select Intelligence Committee, suggesting that if hackers decide to do anything to the satellites, guess what? The United States has the authority to use weapons on these groups, on these countries. And this is something that's very scary because it's very hard to prove who did the cyber attack. But it doesn't matter to the government. It doesn't matter to those who want war. all they have to do is point a finger and name anyone they want. Who's going to argue with them? Who's going to really know what happened? Nobody. Just like if they hit the financial system or the power grid, all they have to say, it was Russia, it was China, it was the Islamic State, it was Syria, it was Iran. They can use any of these areas, any of these groups, and no one would ever question it because they're never going to show proof. And this is why cyber attacks to them, this is the perfect way into getting into war. And I've said this before. We will be hit with some type of cyber attack in this country to shut down the power grid, shut down the water system, shut down the financial system, and it'll be very easy for the government to blame whoever they want. And the people are going to go along with it. And this is something that we need to make sure that people realize what is going on. This is why we're discussing this. This is why we're looking at all these indicators. This is why we're looking at the situation, because we know what is happening here. Now, the Orlando gunman, the patsy, the whole thing is getting stranger and stranger by the minute. Now it turns out that Omar visited the Pulse Club very often. He was a frequent customer to this establishment. Actually, his wife is saying that he has gay tendencies. Actually, he was caught on a gay website. So everything is getting stranger and stranger. And when we look at all the information and the videos, a lot of it doesn't make sense whatsoever. And I know they threw up there some Snapchat videos that show absolutely nothing. All you can hear is gunfire in the background, which I'm not saying there wasn't gunfire. Because you can hear gunfire from the police, you can hear gunfire from inside, because we know there were people, not just Omar, but others inside there who were part of the operation team to manage this false flag. But so far, we haven't seen the gurneys, we haven't seen the bodies, we haven't seen any of this that they've been talking about. And we would have seen tons of ambulances, tons of helicopters, tons of gurneys. But we're not seeing much of this at all. And actually, the pictures they are showing, these people aren't even hurt. They're just like laying on the ground. And some of these people that they're carrying, after they thought the camera was off of them, they get up and they walk away. So there is something odd going on here. Now, when we look at this situation, the website Cryptagon, it has put together some interesting facts and a quite odd coincidence. First of all, the Orlando shooter, Omar Mateen, he changed his name in 2006. Records also show that he filed a petition for a name change in 2006 from Omar Mir Siddiq to Omar Mir Siddiq Mateen. Why is that important? Why is his original last name, Siddiq, also spelled Siddiq, which is Siddiqui? Because of a previous terrorism case in Florida in which the FBI informant's name was the exact same name, Siddiqui. And because that previous case may have been one of those FBI prop jobs where the informant was used to falsely accuse a suspect of some type of terrorist act, Omar decided to change his name and change the spelling, which is very odd. So when we look at this, we say, what are the odds that an FBI informant in a previous Florida terrorist case shares the same last name as the perpetrator of the worst mass shooting in U.S. history? That's very interesting. Because when we look at this, people say, well, it's a very common name. Everyone has it. No, they don't. Actually, it's a very uncommon surname in the United States. When the United States Census was taken, there were about 4,994 individuals with the last name Siddiq, rating its number 6,281 for all surnames. Siddiq is least common in the southeastern states. Very interesting. So did the FBI just investigate the Orlando shooter, or was he part of the plan? Did they enlist him for another operation? Well, we know that Omar met with informants, and it's confirmed that he met with informants working for the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation over a period of 10 months. And over the 10 months, they introduced him to confidential informants, informants posing as handlers. Very interesting. So this whole entire scenario of what happened there is getting stranger and stranger by the moment. We see Jay Johnson is out there. He is saying that to protect the United States from the threat of terrorism, we need gun control. It's a critical component of homeland security. Wait a minute. We have terrorists running around in this country, if we believe the official story, and they want to take our weapons away? Does that make sense? Well, think about it. Every time they came up with gun laws, which there are thousands upon thousands of gun laws, they said, we need these to protect you. Well, how are they doing so far, if we believe the official story? Have they protected the American people with everything they said? No, they haven't. They lied. They lied once again. This whole thing that they're trying to do is an illusion. They're trying to tell you there's terrorists and we need gun control at the same time. Does that make any sense to anybody? No, it really doesn't. We know why they're doing this. Because they're pushing the idea of removing the weapons from the people. The president wants the UN Arms Treaty ratified. That's his main goal at this point. And once that's ratified, all the other legislation, that will easily pass. And this is his main focus right now. And very interestingly, the U.S. is the biggest exporter of arms around the world. So they're telling the American people we shouldn't have arms. Meanwhile, our government exports billions of dollars worth of arms around the world. Very interesting. Now, I received an email from an individual, and this person doesn't want to be named at all, and I'm not allowed to say where this person works. I can't even say he or she. This person is very nervous about the information I'm about to tell you. Now, I cannot confirm this at this point, but I just want to mention this, that this person works for a certain group in government, and this person is running a project in conjunction with FEMA. And the project deadline that they're working on was June 30th of 2018. But this person was just given notice to bring in the deadline to June 30th of 2016. The person said, we are expecting a major event and the office of the governor is preparing all emergency planning by the ELT committee to ensure all checks are in place. The person received this notice at the beginning of May. And what the person is saying is that we should expect electricity, gas, water. This could be shut down. Food supplies will be hard to get. Now, what this exactly is, we don't know. I can't confirm this, but I just wanted to relay this to everyone. We know certain things are happening very, very quickly here in the United States. This doesn't mean that something's going to happen on this date. This means that they brought the deadline up to finish the project, which means that there's another date which is closing in very, very fast. So for those people who haven't prepared, I would suggest preparing, getting ready. Make sure you have your food, your water supplies, your weapons, your gold, your silver, your cash on hand, your toiletries, batteries, lights, candles, you name it, because we don't know what the situation is going to be. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.